A society obsessed with honor creates a system whose only goal is to completely destroy it. Imagine a punishment that leaves you physically intact but socially annihilated, a social death. In ancient Greece, they didn't just want to hurt you, they wanted to erase who you were, turning your body into a living public billboard for shame. This wasn't about justice, it was about absolute control, and the cruelest methods were reserved for women. The weapons were not swords, but radishes and scissors. What they did with an ordinary dried fig is arguably more humiliating than any physical torture in history. Stick around, because the ancient playbook for controlling a population by breaking its women is still echoed in our modern world. In ancient Greece, war was never confined to the battlefield. It was the beginning of a relentless cycle of suffering that fell hardest on the women left behind. When a city was captured, the men were cut down, but the women were left to endure punishments that combined both pain and overwhelming humiliation. They became living symbols of defeat, stark reminders of a conquered people. In the aftermath of massacres, their fate was decided not by mercy, but by sheer brutality. Stripped of protection, they were dragged into slavery, beaten, and paraded as the spoils of war. For them, punishment was never a private affair. It was a public performance designed to crush dignity as much as it broke the body. In ancient Athens, your reputation was currency. For women, this currency was tied directly to modesty and domestic honor. When that honor was breached, or simply accused of being breached, the system sought to inflict a wound that would never heal. The goal was not prison time, but the creation of an instrument of social death. This stain would shame families, alter children's futures, and the stigma could easily outlive the physical injuries. The authorities were crafting a psychological masterpiece of control, ensuring that the victim walked into the public square as a neighbor or wife but left it as a permanent spectacle. Before we reveal the details of the most intimate and degrading ritual, tell me, do you think social shaming is a necessary tool for justice, or is it always a form of cruelty? Comment justice or cruelty below. To inflict this social death, the Greeks turned to the most mundane items. The chosen instruments for one of the most infamous rituals were a hard, knobby radish or a dried fig. This ordinariness was a calculated part of the cruelty. It made the punishment feel improvised, intimate, and unbelievably humiliating. The accused woman was brought forward, already naked from the waist down or forced into a minimal, degrading garment, leaving nothing to hide behind. The crowd's attention was forced to narrow to a single, shameful point. The magistrate or resentful husband would announce the offense: adultery, seduction, or some perceived breach of honor. The ritual began with measured slowness. The instrument was presented, pressed against, and then forced into the body. The intent was to inflict a symbolic violation, mocking sexual transgression while brutally reversing the roles. The woman was subjected to an enforced public indignity that transformed her body into undeniable evidence of her shame. The physical impact was immediate and horrifying. A hard radish bruised and scraped, but a dried fig, when driven home, would tear and cause burning abrasion. The pain was described as sharp, hot, and utterly humiliating. Yet the true agonizing torture was psychological, the knowledge that her body was being used as a stage prop for communal contempt. In some accounts, the object was deliberately left in place for a time, then removed and paraded before the onlookers, smelled, or even smashed to drive home the mockery. The cruelty of this specific act was extended by its aftermath. The woman's body, so publicly violated, was explicitly marked as spoiled and dishonored. The very ordinariness of the item of food became a symbol of contamination. Beyond the immediate wounds, the after-effects were severe. The injured flesh was highly prone to infection in an age without antiseptics. Scarring and chronic pain followed, a permanent, agonizing reminder of her humiliation. The longer punishment was the crushing of her spirit, a brand of disgrace that the body carried long after the wound closed. This level of intentional, ritualistic cruelty is hard to process. If you're finding this as shocking as I am, smash the like button and let me know you're still absorbing this history. The next punishment, bodiso, utilized the ultimate public stage the Agora of Athens. This was the beating heart of the city, a place where merchants shouted, philosophers argued, and citizens gathered. To be dragged here was the core of the degradation, not as a free woman of Athens, but as an object of ridicule. The condemned woman was stripped of her garments, sometimes entirely, sometimes left with a ragged cloth that failed to conceal her body. She was then forced to stand or be bound upright against a post, her arms stretched, exposed under the harsh Mediterranean sun. For a society obsessed with female modesty, public nudity was more devastating than a lash across the back. This exposure was a calculated, agonizing display, amplified by the marketplace. Neighbors, traders, and even slaves passed by and saw her not as a person, but as a definitive example. Children laughed, old men pointed, others would spit or hurl refuse. All the while, the guards made no effort to intervene. The punishment thrived on the crowd. The body suffered in cruel, drawn-out ways. Hours under the Athenian sun burned the skin until it blistered. Without water, the mouth dried to a choking thirst. Weakness spread, forcing her into shameful postures, slumping and trembling, unable to hide herself. Dust clung to sweat like a layer of filth. Insects gathered, crawling freely on her wounds, mouth and eyes. A once respected woman was reduced to a public warning. Some endured for hours, others for an entire day. A few never returned alive, collapsing from heat stroke or simply left until death took them. The Athenians considered the punishment complete only once humiliation had run its course, once the Agora had feasted on the disgrace. Beyond exposure, they targeted the very symbols of womanhood. In ancient Greece, a woman's hair was more than appearance. It was her pride, identity, and a symbol of her femininity. To strip it away was to strip away her honor. That is why head shaving became one of the most humiliating punishments, often carried out alongside brutal beatings. For a wife accused of adultery, her hair was cut off in public, leaving her permanently marked as disgraced. This shame was amplified by the beatings, struck with rods, belts, or fists. For slaves, this combination was routine. The profound cruelty lay in its permanence. Wounds from a whip could heal, but her hair would take months or years to return. During that time, her bare scalp spoke louder than words. To lose one's hair was to lose identity itself. It was the final, indelible reminder that a woman's body did not belong to her, but to her husband, her master, or the state. This journey through ancient history reveals three chilling but crucial psychological lessons that still matter today. First, the power of social contempt. The ancient Greeks understood that shame is a more effective weapon than pain. The invisible marks of shame, the stigma, the obliterated dignity, poisoned life forever. This is a terrifying mirror of how modern cancel culture can deliver a social death that's hard to recover from. Second, the ordinary as an instrument of terror. By using a radish or a fig, the ancients blurred the line between the sacred and the profane. It shows that any object, no matter how mundane, can be weaponized in a ritual of humiliation. We see this today in the simplest of online posts. An ordinary photo, once private, becomes a public instrument of mockery and contamination. Third, the battle for bodily autonomy. The core message of Bodiso was, "You do not belong to yourself. You belong to the city, and the city may strip you bare at will." This ancient conflict over who owns a woman's body and reputation is sadly evergreen. From battles over personal privacy to online harassment, the struggle to claim one's physical and digital self as one's own is a direct modern echo of the woman bound in the Athenian Agora. The ultimate lesson is this: they didn't just want to punish the body, they wanted to destroy the spirit. This history is a stark reminder to guard your honor, your privacy, and your right to be a human being, not just an example. If you found this history compelling, please subscribe for more deep dives into the dark corners of history and psychology, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Until next time, stay vigilant about the power of shame.